right, so I guess that's our cue to get started. Wow. So when we pitched this panel, we were like, cool, so there's going to be like 3 people here, and they're all going to be related to us, and not just because we're Jewish. Maybe we are all related to you.
Distantly.
Yeah, but wow. Welcome to Jewing Fandom Right, presented by Nice Jewish Fangirls. Thank you so much. Live event. We've never, I guess unless you count like a Facebook live stream, but wow. I'm going to say that a lot.
For those of you guys who don't know, Nice Jewish Fangirls is a podcast. We started about a year ago, and this is our first Comic-Con debut event. We're really excited that you all joined us.
And clearly there was a market.
Yeah, we thought that they were like being overly optimistic by giving us this big room. We were looking at the capacity and we were like, 100 people? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
No one's going to show up.
I was like, oh, they're being nice. Well, anyway, yeah, like Tamar said, we are a podcast where 3 Jewish women come together and discuss all of the wonderful, nerdy, feminist, Jewish, geeky things that we are obsessed with. And my name is Michal Schick. I'm the host of Nice Jewish Fangirls. Louder. Louder. I think I need a booster seat. My name is Michal Schick. I'm the host of Nice Jewish Fangirls, and I'm also an entertainment writer at Hypeable.com. And I also started the Facebook group Orthodox Ladies United in Fandom, which is there's people here. Yeah, and I'm joined by my amazing co-host,
SM Rosenberg.
And who are you?
Who am I? I was telling Michal, I was like, we have to introduce ourselves. I don't remember who I am anymore. So I am currently, I work in communications, but I, in the past, have been an author, a journalist, a auto mechanic, and yeah, my dad wrote the Hogwarts Haggadah, which I helped him with that. I edited that, and I was his like chief publicist. Yeah, I did a lot of his interviews for him so that he could concentrate on writing. It was a very big deal, and he's coming out with a new book, but that's not why we're here.
Maybe next year.
Yeah.
And
Hi, I'm Tamar Herman. I write about pop culture, specifically K-pop, for a few websites, including Billboard and NBC. I'm a professional fangirl, pretty much.
that is the life, by the way.
Some days.
Yeah. We can talk about that more later. But first, we always start our podcast with going around saying something that we are currently obsessed with. The section is called Current Obsessions because we're super creative like that. And so we're just going to go around quickly. I'm going to start because I actually have one that was not what I read over the past 3 days of Chag. Happy Sukkot to anybody celebrating. And I was lucky enough to see Gal Gadot, Gal Gadot at the 92nd Street Y last week. She was amazing and told several adorable stories about her daughter and how her daughter hated going to set. And I'm like, wow, that's the only person in the world who hated going to the Wonder Woman set. And it was wonderful. She was so charming. Made a couple of Jewish jokes as well that were very much appreciated by the audience at the 92nd Street Y, as I'm sure you know. Tamar, what are you currently obsessed with?
Over the holiday, I just read Marissa Meyer's Lunar Chronicles. There was like a little bit of Jewishness in there. The villain's name is Levana, which is moon in Hebrew, so that was cute, but mostly I just found myself thinking of Sailor Moon like all the time. But it was a cute series. Go read it if you want.
I like that series because I like that the hero and the heroine who like fall in love are also like, we're in love, but we also have other things to do, like save the world. Like, it's okay that we can't be in love right now. And I'm like, okay, that's refreshing. I enjoy that. SM, how about you?
So I did a lot of reading over the holiday, and one of the books that I read is called Airborne by Kenneth Oppel, and he's a Canadian writer, and I had never heard of him, but I had picked this book up. It's apparently a very secret talent that I have. It's so secret that I didn't know I had it, which is to pick up books from like used book sales and places like that, and they actually turn out to be really, really good. This has happened multiple times, but like I don't trust my own taste, so I never pick them up until like 4 years after I've bought them. So I've had this one like on my shelf next to my bed for literally 4 years, and I never picked it up. And then I picked it up over the holiday because I was running out of books to read, which is a strange thing, but it happens sometimes. And I picked it up, and it is actually amazing, and I'm really glad that there is a sequel. And it is a swashbuckling, you know, basically adventure on the high seas kind of a story, except the high seas in this case are mostly in the air because it takes place in a science fiction universe where airplanes never became a thing because airships like blimps and like the Hindenburg became so successful that they became like the luxury way to travel, and airplanes never caught on after that. So the main character is a cabin boy on this ship, and he knows it inside and out, and then all kinds of crazy things start happening, and there are sky pirates, and there's like all kinds of stuff going on, and new characters come in, and he makes friends, and his promotion is thwarted, and it was much better than I ever expected some random book that I picked up at a used book sale to be, and I am really excited to look up and read the sequel.
That's awesome. I love it when that happens. It's a rare gift, I think, especially over a long holiday. So to just lay out some of what we're going to do, we are going to talk a little bit about who we are, how we started this podcast, and we're going to get to some questions we'd like to address, some of which have come from our listeners on the internet place. And then we'll take questions from you guys. And the first 2 people to answer questions will get a t-shirt. To ask questions. I mean, we're answering them. We already have t-shirts.
So pretty much you guys should all run to the microphone over there and do some exercise.
Especially if you're a woman size medium or large. That's what we got. Oh, and one other t-shirt will be given away on our podcast because we thought that was only fair. Okay, so a little bit about us. What makes us nice Jewish fangirls? I mean, obviously we're all like just the nicest people to embrace God's earth. I think that's
definitely
indisputable. Yeah. Same here. But what drew us to fandom? Like, how did we become fans with a capital F? Tamar, you want to start?
I don't know. I was just raised that way.
Same.
I professionally got into fandom because I didn't know what else to do with my life, and I like writing a lot, so I ended up writing about pop culture for a few websites, and I mentioned before that I write for Billboard, and I cover Korean pop music, and I was able to write my thesis about that and Star Trek and how those relate to each other, so that was kind of the start. I wrote it about Wonder Woman and a lot of other fun things. If you want to read a take on why I think that Gal Gadot is the most important Jewish heroine ever, go check the forward. But pretty much it was natural. I studied what I liked to study in college, and I liked reading and talking about pop culture and movies and pretty much anything else, so that ended up coming up that way. I don't know, one of my first memories growing up was my dad taking us to see A New Hope, and I just remember being horribly scarred by seeing Luke's, the bones. This is one of my first childhood memories, is being scarred by Star Wars, but I still really like it, so I guess that's a big plus, but I still stayed in fandom.
My baby brother, when we showed him for the first time A New Hope, he was 8 years old, and we got up to that part, and he looks at us, and he was big eyes, and he's like, "Are you sure this movie is appropriate for children my age?"
I'm still not convinced it's appropriate for children after all these years.
How did you become a fangirl, SM? Capital F.
I think it's interesting because now I think back on it, I was probably initially resistant to fandom because, I don't know, I'm just a born contrarian, and the people that I was surrounded with were like my dad and my brother, and my dad was super into Star Trek, and we had lots of VHS recordings of old Star Trek episodes, and I remember not wanting to watch. And my brother was into baseball, and I remember not being interested and not wanting to get into that. But then slowly but surely, I would watch an occasional episode, and I would be like, wow, this is really good. And then I got into baseball through, well, it's actually the 2001 World Series. I don't know how many people here are, sports fans and consider that part of their fandom, but yes, sports is a fun fandom to be part of, and so the 2001 World Series was probably my gateway drug into baseball fandom, and then, yeah, it went from there. But yeah, being surrounded and having the opportunities to engage constantly with various different fan cultures, and then making more friends within fandom cultures that, we get to reinforce each other's obsessions and likes and dislikes, and yeah, being part of a community of fans really helps you explore and be interested in more things.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point in that we all, I think, kind of start this journey to fandom either alone or with maybe the guidance of somebody that we love. My mother bought me the Harry Potter books, my father got me into Star Wars, but it's something that you live with on your own, in your head, telling yourself these stories over and over again. And then, as we've kind of been able to grow up with the internet and find this clearly big community of people who enjoy the same things that we do, and I think that was very much my journey too. It was very much loving things and then finding out that other people also love them, and it was really wonderful. So, what draws us to fandom from a Jewish point of view, guys? I guess I would say that, if you're Jewish, it's kind of a fandom.
There's an obsessive undercurrent to a lot of Jewish
You're always
observance.
thinking about it, you're always trying to meet other people who are into it.
Yeah, I mean, it really, it can go down to like, oh my god, you like that brand of challah? Oh my god, me too. Woo,
Pretzel challah.
woo, pretzel challah.
I actually had a conversation about that yesterday and introduced it to my mother, so there you go.
Pretzel challah's the bomb. And yeah, I feel like, obviously I know plenty of Jewish people who would not consider themselves geeks, and that's part of the reason we came together, because we recognize the geek in each other. But I think that there is something you study text, you understand, regardless of where you are on a spectrum of observance, there's a certain connection to a subject that we all share and we live, and it's a very important part of our lives. And I definitely would consider that a fandom. How about you?
Well, my dad is a rabbi, and he might have a few quibbles with calling Judaism a fandom, but I'm sure he would be able to see the parallels, because that is, what we do. We do a lot
listen,
of...
we stood in basically lines for like a whole day on Yom Kippur, right? Anybody done that recently?
So for me, I think it's kind of twofold. Like, I kind of got into a lot of fandoms because I liked reading on Sabbath all the time. Like, that's what I did. So that's how I got into a lot of my books. But as growing up in New York as a Jew who's very involved in pop culture in general, it kind of made me, every time I read a book that was based on like Christianity, like everything else in this country is, and then there was like one Jewish reference, I just got really, really excited, and somehow it just kind of took over, like, oh, look, this has some little fake Hebrew word in it or something. Like, this is so exciting. Like, once in a while, when someone mispronounces Hebrew really, really badly on a TV show or a movie, like, I still get really excited.
Arrow. They need a pronunciation coach, they really do.
So I think it just kind of became an exploration. Fandom was kind of a tool for me to explore what it means to be Jewish in America and seeing myself through the lens of fandom, which I really liked. So, like, seeing Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and there's the Goldstein sisters, and they had like nothing Jewish really about them except their last name, but that was really exciting even so. So, I don't know, just like I was able to think about myself and my place in the world through my fandom and fandom's lack of Judaism in a lot of cases.
I think that's a really important point, in that I think a lot of marginalized groups deal with this, or small groups of people anyway, deal with perceiving yourself through the absence of yourself. In media, we I don't know, I remember there was a rabbi on ER who turned out to be my drama teacher during college, and that was like really exciting, you know, and like whenever there would be like a bar mitzvah, like Baruch Atah, you know, and like, I mean, with all due respect to anybody's Hebrew pronunciation, God knows mine is not great, but it does seem that there are certain performative aspects that turn up in media, and that's it, you know, and we kind of have to shape in everything else,
And like, Jews run Hollywood is a common trope, but then why is there nothing particularly Jewish about a lot of things? Like, I got ridiculously excited in elementary school when I watched like the OC with Chris Michael. Like, that's like cute.
Also, the thing that was more exciting for me about the OC than Chris Michael was one time when like their grandmother, the Nana, is coming to visit, and he's like, "We have to hide all the bread. We have to hide all the bread. It's Passover. She'll freak out." And I was like, "Oh my God, I've never seen this on TV before." Because as far as most shows are concerned, you know, there's Hanukkah and there's nothing else. You know,
that's pretty much it. But like a lot of the time when I introduce the podcast or just being a Jewish fangirl professionally to people who aren't Jewish or aren't particularly involved in fandom, they're just like, but like there's so many Jews involved in making all this. I'm like, yeah, but there's not really an audience for them to let their Jewishness shine. So I don't know. I've already mentioned a few times how I'm a pretty big YA fantasy reader, and there's a lot of Jewish YA fantasy right now, like Cassandra Clare's books, Sarah J. Maas, Marissa Meyer old, and have like these nice little Jewish aspects hidden into them, and I just get so freaking excited reading about them.
Well, I think that would probably lead us to a question of what we would like to see more of. Like, it's a complicated question. Because well, yeah, that was, we actually wrote what we want to see less of, Nazis.
it was like our fear was, you know, before this panel of then we were oscillating between fears of that no one was going to show up here and that Nazis were going to show up here. But none of you appear to be Nazis, so thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, but I think, you know, in terms of what we would like to see going forward, you know, obviously the three of us come from an observant background, and we take that very much into what we would like to see in terms of, but you know, I would imagine even secular Jews would like to have
anything, like, I don't know, interrupting you.
No.
If
it's a
anybody's
podcast, that's what it's for.
That's true. If anybody's read Cassandra Clare's series, it's now a TV show called Shadowhunters. Yay! One of the characters is a Jewish vampire, and there's like a lot of writing about why this makes so much sense, and I just love it so much, and just like, he's not observant, but a cross doesn't stop him, but a Star of David does. Like, it's something so subtle, and like it's just so nuanced, and I was like really confused for a while, and then I found out that the author is actually a Persian Jew, so that's even cooler, but like it's something so like little in a series that's already overflowing diverse characters and everything, and just seeing him have an argument one time with someone why you shouldn't put like a ban on people for owning property or something because of the Holocaust. Like I was just like sitting there bawling my eyes. I was like, there's so many books I've read in my life and TV shows I've seen that could have just been like, no, we've done this bad thing in the past before, like let's not do this again. From a Jewish perspective was just really nice, and something I was just like, it's so subtle and everybody can agree when they're reading it. It doesn't need to be like, Jew! Just like, hi, I'm Jewish and I have this perspective, and it's nice to put it out there sometimes. So
I think we need both. I think we need both. I mean, one thing
Jews also good.
I was you know, tweeting about the panel from our account, and I like wrote something, you know, happy Sukkot, and I looked in Twitter like for like a GIF. Oh God, I'm gonna get fired. A moving picture that is in a tweet, you know, that, for a sukkah, and I spelled it all the different ways, and there was nothing, and I was like, oh, I would like to see more Jewish gifts.
There's only like 5 that have to do with Jewish, and most of them are Drake.
No, I found a bunch of them when I was writing an article, I think, for Juicy about, Jay Swipe, and it was basically just a whole bunch of GIFs telling people, no, don't do that. But, yeah, sometimes it's like, you know, the variety, you know, you find the same one, you know, 10 different times, and you want, want more.
Just general diversity, like gifts, definitely. I'm going with the
one of my
Harga. Just like diversity of
Yeah, but
Jews
if
in
it's Jewish,
media.
wouldn't it be like Jewish GIF? That sounds better.
Peanut butter.
Wait, guys. It's a Jewish.
No, stop it.
It's not. No.
This is the kind of thing we cut out of the podcast.
Yes, editing, tons of fun. But just personally, like in media, like you have either the secular Jew or you have like the Hasidic Jew, and like we need the little in between, and it needs to not just be like when I tell people that like there are not just only like brown eyes, brown haired Jews in New York, like just no, like looking around the room, like it's not the most diverse group that is here at Harvard. There is a
right
blue
over
Jew.
there. I'm assuming you're Jewish. If you're not, welcome.
But just like have diversity of Jews in media would be nice sometimes. Like I feel like a lot of the time it's either you're super well, your parents are super traditional and you're like whatever, or you're like Hasidic or you're ex-Hasidic, but like I went to Jewish high school and I went to secular college and I studied abroad in Korea. Like I have a lot of friends who aren't Jewish, but you don't get any of that. You don't get that there's any diversity in Jews. You don't get that there are Ethiopian Jews. You don't get that there are Asian Jews. You don't get that there are anything other than white Ashkenazi Jews in media, and they're only pretty much
in a certain way.
They're only certain ways usually, and I just wish we could kind of change that, because like when somebody asked me why we were having this panel because people know what Jews are, I'm just like, really? Really? This is what you're going to tell me, that Hollywood's really, really great at diversity?
There's a line in an old, God, I think it was a Gregory Peck movie about, I can't remember what it's called, but it was about him fighting anti-Semitism.
Gentleman's agreement.
Yes, a gentleman's agreement, thank you. And his son says, "Pa, what are Jews really?" And he's like, "Well, they're people." And I have that in my Facebook bio. What about you, Eshram? What would you like to see in media?
Well, yeah, when we were discussing this before, I agree about how there's a tendency toward extremes, and it's just much easier to write an extreme version of religion in general, of any kind of religion, and we see that a lot with Judaism and representation, how it skews, like you said, toward, super secular, where like they just have, Willow Rosenberg, and you have the last name is a giveaway, and then they'll have one line here or there, like, how did you spend your Christmas? Being Jewish. So you get that, but there's nothing else that she ever does or says that like indicates that she comes from this, very rich and, complicated culture. It's not really part of her character. And then
Sidebar, every year I tell myself I'm not going to get Chinese food, and then I fail. Chinese food is really good, guys.
Yeah. And, so then on the other extreme, we sometimes get sushi. On the other extreme, you have the very, very Hasidic representations, and the very different and othered and alien kind of Judaism that most people can recognize as as being from the media, or they'll recognize it from pictures, but your average middle-of-the-road Jew, generally falls somewhere, on the spectrum between those extremes, and there isn't a lot of that.
And
that's why
that middle of the road itself is like really diverse.
It's a very wide road.
You had everyone in this room line up and be like, "Where are you in the middle of the road?" Like
it's like a 16-lane highway.
Oh, maybe a 12-lane highway.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the reasons that I really
shave it, Joe.
This is one of the reasons that I really liked the Miss Marvel comics, which you can't see, but underneath my shirt.
Lift up your shirt.
This is a very Jewish, family-friendly podcast.
You can't see, but yeah, I made this costume. It's a Miss Marvel costume.
Stand up on the chair.
I'm not standing on that. I have some dignity left. So what really grabbed me about those comics was that they do basically represent a bunch of middle-of-the-road types of Muslim observances and the way people live. Like Kamala herself, Miss Marvel, does not wear a hijab, but she has a friend who wears a hijab, and and there's even a conversation about why she wears the hijab when like one of the white girls comes up and she's like, well, I hope that you're doing it because you want to and not because you're forced to, and she's like, actually, my dad thinks it's a phase and I'll grow out of it, and so like she's doing it out of choice, and just having those little things in there, and having, Kamala, she goes to the convenience store and she's like smelling the BLTs, but she can't eat them, and so little things like that, that show that like she lives, a life that is permeated by her culture and her religion, but is not, the only defining aspect of it. So I would like to see more of that in Jewish characters and Jewish representation.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons it's important is the reason that all representation is important, because, there's a phrase that, like, if you can see it, you can be it, and I guess maybe that's a little hackneyed by now, it's kind of 2012, but, I don't know, stuff moves fast, guys. But I think, the reverse is also true. Like, if people see you or people like you doing a certain thing, then they're much less likely to get the kind of to give you the kind of questions that, like, I worked at TV Guide for a semester, and like had a lot of questions like, oh, are you like from Brooklyn? And I'm like, no, I live in Queens, man. Like, I hate Brooklyn. No offense to Brooklyn.
I have nothing terrible to say about Brooklyn, except for the fact that I went there and then immediately left.
But yeah, so I mean, I think, it's important to, I think, I feel like we are also privileged to live in New York, and LA, and oh god, coastal elites, I guess, areas where Jews congregate and it's not so foreign, that asking your boss to have off for a holiday is not like an insane thing, and we are really, really lucky about that, and like I think that we should all, like, the three of us have all experienced like occasions of being fortunate in that way. But the more people see, the more, like, the less weird it is. Like, maybe there's somebody somewhere in the middle of the country that is, really needs off, and their boss is like, I don't believe you that this is a holiday, because that happens a lot.
Especially when you try to describe what you do on the holiday. Like, we build a hut in the backyard, and we shake some plants around.
And not even like...
I swear, this is a real thing.
And not even like the minor ones that people who are more observant will hold, but like Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, which like, as a New York Jew, I'm convinced every American knows what that is. That is not the case at all. And just like, if we had it once in a while, like, I know Glee had like one Jewish character who was Asian, and like that was really great, but I watched a few seasons and I never remember them ever discussing anything except that her last name.
Oh, her last name was Cohen Chang, but she was not, yeah.
like it was cool that we had a diverse
But she wasn't Jewish enough to go to YU. She applies to YU in the college episode.
I did not
There
get
was a
that far.
Yeshiva University application on
just
screen,
like,
and they reject her.
If they had her have to miss school for one day or something, like just like high school shows or something that like people are watching or people are aware of in the country, like I think Judaism gets like, here you have like a menorah when there's a Christmas tree. Like that's the Jew thing. Just like a little bit more. And like I was saying before, like Hollywood has a lot of Jews in it, and media has a lot of Jews in it, and I just want to see a little bit more activism of that. And like I think there's always this fear of like, well, there's a lot more push for other sorts of diversity in the country, and like that's great. I want that too. I want that more. But also like when I was growing up, I never really remember reading about any Jewish character except at books that were distinctly aimed at Jewish kids, and that kind of sucked.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also, and I don't know how you combat this on like a large scale, but like any different religious group. Although I think that, because of the whole like Judeo-Christian thing, like we might get it a little more. But people do kind of define Judaism in like who aren't educated, like in contrast to or like comparison to Christianity, and it's like, okay, so Moses is Jesus, right? Like, no. So Hanukkah's your Christmas, like not at all, nothing. And I mean, I grew up in a family that like adores Christmas to the point that it drives me crazy because now there's only so many versions of carols, guys. There are only so many. But I think that, again, the more that we are shown, the more that we can like move away from that, like be like, no, we have our own culture, and like
You feel like you have more options and more choices.
Yeah,
when
exactly.
you can see other ways of feeding.
Exactly.
And just segueing into something else that we wanted to talk about that we sort of discussed. It's really frustrating to me personally when I see Jews being used in media as something to kind of show how bad people are. I don't know if anyone watched Men in the High Castle, but they're in one of the first few. I'm gonna give you all a spoiler. Two guys. Good job, guys. It's pretty much a dystopian AU where like Nazis won, and there's a scene where they show Jews being gassed, and I don't think they would show that from any other sorts of people out there. They wouldn't show like in a random TV show. Like if you show the horrors of
Ethnic cleansing.
Yeah, ethnic cleansing usually. It's not just a one-off 3-second clip showing mothers and children just, being gassed casually because, like, of course the Nazis are bad, and we have to prove it because they killed Jews. But the Nazis killing Jews trope, which is horrible of me to say, is just, like, something that I don't really think we need to show anymore on TV. We know Nazis are bad. We don't need to show them doing exactly what they've already done to 6 million Jews and 5 million others. Like, we don't need that anymore, and I don't really watch CW shows, but I know CW has a new animated series right now that pretty much is about Nazis winning and being superheroes, and I really, really don't want to watch this ever.
I don't know. It's like an alternate. It's like Supergirl is.
Supergirl's a Nazi.
Not okay. I saw this on Twitter.
Wow.
Some of them are renegades.
Like,
some of them are anti and some of them are pro, and they fight each other.
I don't care. Like, we don't need this. Captain America doesn't need to be a Nazi. Like, we don't need more good guys being Nazis because Nazis are magically okay at killing Jews because they're Nazis. Like, yes, it's happening. I get really mad on Twitter. You can follow me once in a while.
Person in the back will be happy to take your question when we're taking questions like pretty soon. Sorry, but
We should probably start questions now.
you guys want to start asking us questions now?
If you get over to
All
the
right.
microphone, quickly.
All right, we might have to order another run of shirts. Wow.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you want to talk to me after, we have to move on pretty quickly between now and the end of the panel, but if you want to talk to me about how angry I get about Nazi portrayal in animated series, I'm really happy to do that.
It's like the people who literally run Comic-Con are like on the next panel, so we gotta go. First question.
Is it? I don't think it's on. I don't think it's
No, it's
on.
on. We can hear
Is it
you.
on?
Yes.
I'm just short.
Been there, sister.
Okay. Thank you. I'm glad you have this, and I'd love to know your opinion. There's a new genetic DNA test that's being used to help prove people are Jewish, especially people from the Soviet Union getting out. So I just recently found out within the last year that I'm Jewish and never knew until I
Yes,
had the test.
welcome. You must now be very sad forever.
Yeah, so I'd love to
Feel all the guilt.
hear, if you've heard, what else you've heard about this and how you feel about it.
I haven't heard anything about that, but I think that's fascinating, and I hope that people. I mean, I think that some, Tamar mentioned that, and again, I think it's a point of privilege that we should definitely know that we are all three white Ashkenazi Jewish women, and from New York, which is not spot on, but fairly close to the general perception of being Jewish. So anything that helps people expand. I mean, David Diggs is Jewish, guys. David Diggs is Jewish. So anything that helps people expand their perception of Jews and Jewish origin. There's so many Jewish communities. Go to Marani. It's a Georgian Jewish restaurant in Queens. It's delicious.
That's exactly where my great-grandparents were from Poland.
Yeah.
Came over from South
Same.
So I found out that that's how I'm Jewish. I guess the horror that they went through when they got here,
A lot
they
of
never
Jews
told
after
about
the
it.
Holocaust, they didn't talk about their origins, and they just wanted to move on and move forward.
I mean, I think the genetic testing is really good if you want to find out more about Judaism. Like, that's great, and if not, oh, that's cool. Like, I really like genetic testing. I haven't done it yet, but I really, really want to do it. It's probably just gonna be like Poland, Jews,
Ounces or something.
I'm fine.
I just moved here in June from North Carolina.
Oh,
so
wow.
Where would I go in New York?
I live in Riverdale. Everyone talks about Brooklyn. Riverdale, too.
I was born in Riverdale.
Same. I was born in Queens.
Depends
Don't
on
go on
like,
Saturdays because nothing is open.
I mean, I think like if you want to find a good Jewish community in New York, it's like whatever you're looking for, Google is your best friend.
It is. And visiting places.
Yeah. Oh, come get your shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Next question.
This one's medium, that one's large.
Hi.
Riverdale. Super Jewish. So my question, so I'm half Jewish and I'm Sephardic, so there's like a little more
More diversity over there than this whole
sometimes we
table.
exist. So because I'm only half and because I don't necessarily fit the like paler, lighter eyed version of a lot of Jews that people perceive, I'm kind of wondering how you combat like subtle anti-Semitism, like you don't look Jewish. The most racist
That is
thing
the
that's
worst
ever
compliment I've
made.
ever received in my entire life.
Or people saying like you're such a grammar Nazi because correcting people's grammar is totally the same as killing 11 million people. So how do you combat things like super subtle anti-Semitism that people don't see in anti-Semitic?
Just call them out on it. It's racist.
But yeah, but I feel like generally I say, hey, that was super anti-Semitic, and people are like, yeah.
Well, that's because Jews aren't allowed to say when there's something wrong about it.
This is very true. I also do think, though, that you have to meet people where they're at, and that we do have to accept that, like, hey, we're a teeny tiny fractional minority, and people might not know. You know, like, I've just learned, my sister taught me, that the phrase drink the Kool-Aid is actually hugely offensive and awful and really reflective of a terrible murder that happened, and not like a fun, cute thing to say. I didn't know that. Education is key, you know, I think not lashing out at people, but also making it clear that, like, you know, hey, this is my background, think of where this phrase comes from and why we think it's okay to say it.
My brother is actually a journalist who writes about this for a living. He's actually going to be working also on a book because that's the kind of family we are. But he has written, there's an article that he wrote, I think, for the Washington Post, 5 Myths About Anti-Semitism, which I found really useful in explaining a lot of these things to people who don't recognize that, you know, certain tropes that come up, you know, like of Jews controlling the world or just implying that all Jews are rich, you know, and the roots of that and how it's, you know, impacted things over time and how that's an important thing to call out and that people just don't recognize that it's offensive. So yeah, in general, if you can find articles that people are, if the people that you run into are willing to learn and willing to read, that always helps. If they're not willing, you know, then nothing you can say is really going to help, but you can, you know, you can call it out for the onlookers so that at least, you know, if somebody else there, you know, is bothered by it, or on the fence about it, they can at least learn from that.
Yeah. And it goes without saying, but also being an ally to other people and, you know, understanding where they're coming from, even when it's sometimes challenging for us, because I know I've been in that situation, like, what, that offends you? And then I have to go back and, like, translate it into Jew, and then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it.
And if it offends you, like, ask why they think that it's okay, and vice versa, like what Michal was saying, like, if you don't understand why something is offensive to somebody else, also ask, like, I'm a huge Twitter person, and I literally will have people reaching out to me like, hey, I just saw someone being super anti-Semitic, do you mind saying something, because I don't really know why it's anti-Semitic, I just know that it is not good, so can you tell me why it's not good? And I really appreciate when people do that, because, like, good, educate yourself, it's nice, and it'll make the world a better place.
Overall, asking is better than just assuming, in general. I've had that situation where I was, like, praying in Disney World and people were staring at me, and, like, I guess in retrospect it looked kind of weird, but, you know, I would have rather people just ask, you know, hey, your costume.
Hi, my name is Sophie.
Hi, Sophie.
I'm from Long Island. You talked a lot in the beginning about coming from a family of nerds and, like, how that was just kind of how you were brought up, and I really get that because that's been me with music, like Grateful Dead. Like, my parents are like huge Deadheads, so that's been like my kind of upbringing. But my parents are super not nerdy, so they totally support this aspect of my life, like the nerd culture, and they like are excited for me to go to cons, but they don't get how can I explain it to them in terms that they're gonna understand.
So I write about K-pop for a living. If anyone doesn't know what that is, that's Korean pop music. My parents have no idea what I do. I write regularly for pretty big outlets and they still have no idea what they do. They just know that they have Google alerts up, so if my name shows up on like CNN, they get really excited. They're just like excited for me.
That's never happened to me.
One day I will. Just like, I don't really think that I need to force it on them. Like I tried to get my mom to listen to some of the music once, like it didn't really work at all. And I just feel like they appreciate what I like without having to like it themselves. So like if you go home today and you're like, I had a great time at the con, and if they ask, okay, what do, you tell them. But if they're like, I wouldn't suggest forcing them to sit down to watch all the extended versions of Lord of the Rings. Like that'll probably make them really bad.
No, I don't want to like make them watch it. I just want to kind of relate it to them in like a Jewish sense of like connecting. Because my dad, he actually grew up in Flatbush, which is like, yeah. He grew up in Flatbush. He went to CSU, but like he did the whole thing. So I want to just converse with him about the connections that I draw in ways that he can like, kind of understand it and digest it.
So I think that's, I mean, I definitely relate because my mother is like super not a geek. Like it's incredible. One thing
to a lot of you.
She did, actually. Yeah. I think she's still a little bit confused, but in a good way. But I think, you know, something that you can do, like not sitting down and forcing them to watch all of Lord of the Rings, but understandable. Right. But, you know, my siblings and I watched Stranger Things, and we were like, Ma, you're going to love this show. Turns out she does love the show. So we can connect with her over that. You know, I don't think she really gets what, like why I would want to come here and stand online for a panel for, you know, a whole bunch of hours. But you can connect it to something that they value. And I mean, look, if you want to use like the metaphor from the beginning of like, we all stood in line to talk to God for a really long time on Yom Kippur. You know, it, obviously Lahavdil is not the same, but we are throwing ourselves physically into something, you know, that we love, and like, that's
I think like because you said your dad went to like yeshiva, like if you just tell him like people really delving deep into like fandom or something is like similar to like him having to study Talmud in school. Like that would probably work too. Like I had SM's dad as a teacher in elementary school, and he taught me Talmud, and I definitely remember writing a Harry Potter page for Talmud class because he wanted us to learn how Talmud was written, and we pretty much had to be like, and Snape did this, and I remember people did Simpsons, and so just like delving into fandom isn't that different from delving into any sort of religion. It's just like getting below the surface level of the first book or first movie and talking about it with your friends.
And you talk about the ideas that are in, you know, like if you like a book, you know, you can talk about why you like the book, you know, the specifics of it, you know, what the character had in common with you, you know, and like on our podcast we tend to talk about, you know, themes that, you know, resonate with us. Like each episode we have, you know, some kind of theme. Like we did for Yom Kippur, we did redemption arcs, and you know why we.
Darth Vader is not one.
Yes, well, and why
on Twitter kind of made me rethink that. Now I don't know how I
didn't read that.
And does death atone for all mistakes and things like that? But yeah, if you talk about, you know, the concepts, you don't. They might be more interested, you know, in exploring the source material themselves or not, but they'll at least, you know, they can see that, you know, that it's not something that's baseless, that you do have, you know, a human investment in it.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Meryl. I'm from North Jersey.
Meryl.
There as well.
No, I love how everybody's like saying where they're from, and it's like Jewish geography, and I just love it.
So I have a question about Jewish humor. As a very secular New York Jew, I have felt myself pretty represented in things like Seinfeld, you know, Jon Stewart on The Daily Show, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, stuff like that, which are all really, really funny. But sometimes I worry that there might be a bit of an echo chamber. Like I, as a Jew, I see this, I think, okay, there is something culturally that speaks to me there. Are non-Jews seeing this in some other way that we should be worried about, especially with a lot of the self-deprecating humor that comes from a lot of this?
So, I just got really, really excited. There is a mini documentary on YouTube by Lindsay Ellis about Mel Brooks's use of Nazism and anti-Semitic humor in his movies, and like the producers and like Blazing Saddles, and she pretty much touches on the fact that there are things that Jews are allowed to do that other people aren't allowed to in jokes, and the problem is that nowadays that's not being kept the way it was a few decades ago, and to the degree where Mel Brooks has spoken out against some of that humor, even though he's like, Jewish comedian, like the best one of the generation, like there's so much you can do as a Jew and so much you can understand as a Jew, and it is like an echo chamber. Like it's sometimes can be problematic, and like we were talking about before, like the middle ground. That's kind of what I think Hollywood sees as the middle ground of Jews. Like you can make jokes about Judaism, that's great, but at the same time, it's also reinforcing stereotypes about Judaism. So I find it personally really problematic when there's just like so many jokes about Jewish mother guilt. Like I think there's a new NBC sitcom about a son who moves back in with his parents in the same apartment as his parents after he gets divorced. And I was just watching the trailer and banging my head against the wall because we do not need a whole sitcom about parents like interfering in their sons' lives because they're Jewish parents. I think it is problematic, and I kind of want to see it change. Like there's other forms of comedy that Jews can do that aren't just bashing Jewish stereotypes that we've seen forever and ever. And I think it'd be kind of cool if Jewish comedians nowadays could explore what it means a little bit, not just to be saying jokes that you think everybody can understand about Jews, but that Jews might appreciate a little bit more because they're Jewish. And like I don't necessarily think that other comedians are meant to make jokes that are laughing at themselves all the time. I think if you had something like Crazy Rich Girlfriend that didn't, like Crazy Rich Girlfriend doesn't, Crazy Ex, sorry.
Oh my God, Tamar, you're so, like, you're rich? Like, what are you talking about?
Sorry. You're obviously mixing it up with Crazy Rich Asians.
That's exactly what I was thinking of, actually. I was thinking fresh off the boat and I was thinking of all three at once. So Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, I really do not like it because I feel like a lot of the times the point is we're making fun of Rachel's Judaism. It's not Rachel is Jewish and she's laughing about something that like her culture does. It's like we are Jewish writers, so we're going to write Jew jokes because we can, and nobody's going to say anything because
like we're in an interesting spot because I think that humor like Seinfeld and like Mel Brooks came from a very kind of like that stuff was newer, you know, than obviously it is now, and I feel like that sort of included in that is sort of like the paradox of being Jewish, right? Like especially white Ashkenazi Jews whose humor of that and whose experience is represented in that kind of humor, we sort of fly under the radar and like we distinguish ourselves through bagels, you know, and lox and like stuff like that. And I think that like on a plus side, I think that people are definitely getting more amenable to the idea that like, hey, there are things that people in a culture can say that people out of the culture shouldn't say, you know, and that's fine, like that's okay. And I think that it's okay for us as Jews to be like, to stand up when something like that happens and be like, hey, just, you know, that's like something, you know, like be like Judy Hopps. A bunny can call another bunny cute, but another animal cannot call a bunny cute.
I think just when something like a joke about bagels and lox is like, that's the only thing people know about Jews, I think that's when it gets problematic. And the documentary I was referencing before about Mel Brooks, pretty much white supremacists have now taken Mel Brooks's humor and turned it into white supremacist humor, so that's kind of not okay.
We should interview Lindsay about that.
We should.
I talk like I know her. Guys, tweet Lindsay Ellis and tell her
I just think that Jewish humor has always been very cathartic, and I think it's at kind of a crossroads right now where maybe it should be less about humor and more about the Judaism, Jewish people needing to say something, not just laughing at themselves all the time. That's just my take.
Thank you. Thank you for alerting me to this TV show that sounds like it's going to be incredibly anti-Semitic. It's probably
to be
racist.
fair, I do want to say, like, I always feel bad, like...
I haven't watched it.
Right. I feel bad kind of judging things, especially, like, comedies and stuff. Like, they are going for, like, you're trying to establish a tone. Not that it's, like, great or acceptable, but I do sort of, like, try and be like, okay, maybe it's more than it seems. Because a lot of the times TV shows that's how they function. That's how they're written.
We can be hopeful that it won't be a complete trash
yes.
fire. But the marketing could be such that the marketing itself is contributing to the belittling of these
That's
issues.
absolutely true.
I haven't seen any of this.
Yeah.
But I do want to raise something that generally in geek culture, when we see things that are racist or sexist or anti-Semitic, people's response is to act individually. But if there's one thing that we've learned from Jewish union leaders like Sidney Hildman and Al Shanker is that we have a lot more power when we act collectively. And there haven't really been spaces that have been established for Jewish nerds or Jewish cultural fans to take action individually. I don't think saying the ADL is not an answer for this for me. I think that something that folks in the space could talk about is how we're going to act collectively to exert our power in moments where we have to address problems.
There are a lot of good, I can't believe I'm saying this, but there are a lot of good Jewish Tumblrs. Do you run one? there are some really good people who the girl behind you was like, yeah, there are a lot of good ones that kind of just set it out there, kind of staking out a Jewish place in the social justice sphere, and do good work. I think that, I mean, that's part of what we're trying to do here. Like we
talk
definitely
about racism a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not activists, and that's not really our aim.
No, but in terms of just like providing a space to talk about things, I think different places have different needs, and I think it would be, I think it's kind of exciting in a way that, like, you're right, there isn't kind of, I mean, like, look, like, I didn't expect people to come to a panel called Nice Jewish Fangirls. Like, I thought that would be definitionally super limiting. And yeah, there are a ton of guys here. I'm assuming that there are a ton of people who are not Jewish here, so thank you, by the way, because that's really cool of you to come. And shout out to the Gentiles.
What Michal hasn't said, I think she referenced in the beginning, Michal started a Facebook page called Orthodox Ladies United in Fandom, Ola. I'm sure you're here. Hey guys. And that was made specifically for Orthodox women who don't feel like there is any space for them anywhere on the internet, but there's not really anything equivalent just for Jews in general, and I think some place like that would be great for something like this. Like, someone correct me. Start a Facebook group. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any Jews who fan Facebook.
From Boston and Arisha last year.
Oh,
From Fandom.
Nice,
Yeah.
very nice. And yeah, so in terms of something, like, I have found it's a little tricky because some people do want to keep their fandom and their politics separate, which is fine. That's their prerogative. But I think you have to respect that, and if you create a space. Which I definitely believe that there is. Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of opportunity to do so. Then make it clear, like, this is a place for advancement, a place that we can come together in the spirit of those organizers. And you know, I think it's not there because there's an opportunity for it.
And I just want to say that I don't know 100% if this was the actual cause, because most of the articles that I've read about it, about the cursed child, was originally, the tickets were supposed to go on sale on the holiday, on Chag, and a lot of Jewish Broadway fans were very, very upset about this, and I don't know how much their input weighed in.
Potterheads.
There were Potterheads and Broadway fans, and like there was like Humans of Broadway tweeted about how, you know, they were disappointed that they wouldn't be able to get tickets, and so a bunch of people, you know, rallied around that tweet. And I don't know, like, numerically if it was really part of the factors that went into this, but they did ultimately change the date of the release so that people could get them, so they pushed them off, I think 1 week, so that the holiday would be over.
It would have been really nice
So,
if they had done that for any of the book releases, so I could have gone to them.
So I'm saying that there is definitely potential for collective action, and you know, it's all really a matter of creating a space and letting people know about it.
Yeah. Email us if you start a place.
Yeah,
Nice.
I'm Ilana Brooklyn on Twitter. Happy to talk.
Hi, awesome. Tweet at us.
Hi, I'm Becca, and I was wondering if you guys ever find yourselves looking at a character that isn't explicitly stated to be Jewish, but you find yourself saying, that character is Jewish, I'm convinced that character is Jewish, and if so, which characters?
The Space Jew in Firefly, does anyone know what I'm talking about? I actually, at one point, I teamed up with my brother and I got this guy's contact information, and then my brother interviewed him and found out that, like, this role was originally envisioned for like a Hasidic Jew in Hasidic garb, and it was supposed to be something extreme like that, but this actor came in and he did his portrayal of the character, and it came across as so completely Jewish, even though the actor is actually not Jewish. But it came across as so Jewish that they decided to forego the costume. So he's just, if you look closely, I think he's wearing a kippah, he's wearing yarmulke, and he's wearing tzitzit, but he's not wearing any of the, the coat or the shtreimel or any of the other traditional clothing.
I mean, my initial answer was, okay, weird thing, like, sometimes there's, like, Jewish characters who are clearly Jewish, and we all know that they're Jewish, and then like non-Jewish people are like, what do you mean? Like when J.K. Rowling was like, yeah, of course Anthony Goldstein's Jewish, people were like, she's pandering, and we were like, no, we knew that. We like celebrated and danced in the street because there was a Jew in Harry Potter. Like, like come on. So I think that's an interesting thing. I did actually see Hello Dolly kind of recently, and I don't remember the male lead's name, but like, and Dolly herself. Yes, I kind of view them both as Jewish, and I don't know why. Like, it was. I think that's neat.
She's
Dolly Levi. Yeah.
Just back to Harry Potter. I definitely grew up thinking like Hermione's probably Jewish. She has bushy brown hair, and like I like all the theories that she could also be black, but she's bushy brown hair and she reads a lot. Like her parents are dentists. She's Jewish.
Hello, my name's Kenny. I'm from Boston. Boston, yeah. So, my question, first up, with the whole CW Nazi show thingy, from the marketing I've seen, it looks like they're building up Nazi characters to watch all the main characters punch them in the face a lot.
Which I appreciate, but I still don't like.
Just to put more context on that, and then my question is, at the beginning, you mentioned about Sarah J. Maas's books being like Jewish, and like I've read them, and I never like noticed the Jewish in them.
Did you read Throne of Glass or the other series?
I read I got like most of the way through Throne of Glass, and now I just have my friend yelling at me every day to finish it. But I was wondering if you could like explain more about Sarah J. Maas.
So in her other series, The Court of Thorns and Roses, whatever each of the books are called, I don't know what the whole series is called. She has like the language that they have to decode is called Lashon HaKodesh, which is the Hebrew for like the holy word. So it's the holy language. So it's literally like Lashon HaKodesh, and like somebody has to read it all. And I'm just like, oh, cool. And so, like, there's some random Hebrew words shouted out every once in a while. I'm just like, oh,
See, I kind of don't like that.
I Googled, she's
come
Jewish.
up with your own thing.
She's Jewish.
You know.
So she can't, so she's,
Jewish.
yeah.
Okay, all right, but still, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I still don't like it. Like, it's just a thing.
I know, that's going to be personal.
I like when, occasionally you have to decode something and, like, a character says, oh, it's in Atbash. And I'm like, I know what Atbash is. My dad uses that for extra credit.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm Leora, and as we actually mentioned before, I do run a rather Jewish Tumblr. My blog says unapologetically Jewish in it.
Woo!
So,
I follow you.
Cool!
that's awesome! So, my question is actually considering a couple of blogs I follow. As somebody said before, there is a constant projecting of Judaism, I find in the Jumbler community, which is the Jewish Tumblr. I don't know. Like, there's a blog I follow called Your Fave is Jewish, which is where they take a specific character and they'll put like a mood board. Finn, I happen to see from Star Wars, is a big one because we don't know anything about his past. I wanted your opinions on that, and on the flip side, your opinions on something like Magneto, whose Judaism was actually erased in the X-Men comics because they couldn't fit it in, which really upsets me, and I'm not going to get into that.
It's like 5 minutes to discuss both of these.
I would just say I'm totally for reimagining characters as Jewish. Like, freaking go for it. Like, no, you don't like it? Okay, I like it.
I'm pro. It's 2 against 1, we win.
I want her opinion as well.
Oh yeah, because 3 Jews never had 2 opinions. I'm for it.
I think if the character has his or her or their own like actual backgrounds, like definitely don't try to change it to make it Jewish. I think Finn is like fun. Like maybe he could be Jewish. I don't really think there's any sort of religion of like Judaism or Christianity in Star Wars, but like I think like someone like I said Hermione, like that made sense to me because like they never discussed it. But I think like
erasure would be bad.
Yeah, don't erase.
Erasure would be bad. But if the character is a blank slate and you want to fill that in by sticking Jew in there, why not?
So you could add it like Magneto's children who are
Jewish,
and they aren't in the movie.
Yeah, that actually I get it. I'm in the position a lot of the time where I'm like, okay, I get it. I get we're teeny tiny. I get it. But I also, like, would it have killed you to have Scarlet Witch wear a Jewish star? Like, would that have been, I mean, like, I rewrote Ultron in my head, where it's like, of course, the twins were like saying Shema as the bomb was like, you know, whatever, and like, and the whole movie's about religion. Like, come on, Joss, what are you doing, man? But you know, I as much as I demand representation, sometimes I'm like, okay, I get it, not this time.
I think the Magneto thing is kind of hard because a lot of the time, like, Magneto's so, like, he's a Holocaust survivor who uses that as a reason why he's a villain, but at the same time, but I think that's laziness. I think it's just like, okay, we don't want to have to address that he's, like, someone who is a survivor and a victim of other people trying to kill him.
A redeemable quality?
I think that's why they wrote it out. They don't want him to be redeemable. There's like, here, he's a bad Jew. A super villain.
Which is also why we need more representation, because like, deal with it, tackle it, dig into it, guys. Come on.
Is this gonna be the last question?
We have only time for one more question.
But we'll we'll hang around outside so you can come talk to us.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Zachary, 5 pounds. Apparently people like the 5 pounds. So my question is so there's a lot of discussion in this panel of like how Jews are sort of represented in a very like cliched way or in very specific way. So my question is more like, why does the panel think that happened in the first place? That Jews were ended up being only like really secular Jews or like Hasidim?
Well, I think it's because it's just easier to write extremes. I mean, like, as you see this on pretty much any TV show ever, that like, as the show goes on and on and on, they run out of, you know, ways to keep the characters nuanced, and they just, you know, kind of condense the characters down to one or two basic traits, and those just get extremified. I think the term on tvtropes.org is flanderized, and things just, you know, they just emphasize like one or two traits, you know, like if this character started off a little bit awkward, you know, that just becomes all they are. And I feel like it's just much simpler to write, and it's, you know, it's lazy, but it's easier to write something that's extreme rather than exploring, you know, various different nuances. And so you end up with the extremes of the spectrum in pretty much any case, and in religion is no exception.
Also, just I think the state of the industry, like, you can't really be an Orthodox Jew in many parts of media just because like you're expected to work 7 days a week, and if you can't, like, okay, fine, you just won't advance, like you won't get to that part of the writer's room. Like, I really do think that's a problem, having worked in media for several years.
I think Baby Batman doesn't work on Shabbos. The actor who plays Baby Batman on Gotham. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's Jewish. He's not super observant, but he keeps Shabbat. He's so adorable. I love Baby Batman.
But I just think like it's kind of probably the people who end up making it in Hollywood, making it their career in media, are people who are either probably ex-Hasidic, like, so they're from a community where like that's where they're coming from, so they feel comfortable writing that, or they're from some background where they've never really, most of the time I assume, haven't like participated with modern Orthodox Jews. So a lot of the time like it's either traditional or it's Hasidic. Like, I don't imagine that many people who are writing in writers' rooms like had a yeshiva day school education, so you don't get the most modern version of orthodoxy in the room. And I feel like that might be a reason why. Like, that's definitely something I've noticed just in news coverage. Like, unless you're in the Jewish writing space, like if you're writing for a Jewish outlet, you're not probably going to get the same sort of coverage as somebody who's either more traditional or comes from a different background, because just like, you can't cover the news 7 days a week, it's gonna suck. Like, you just won't. Like, if you want to do certain things about Judaism, you won't be able to advance in your career. So, and I really do think that's kind of one of the reasons. There's a lot of reasons. Also because Hollywood doesn't want to see some of those things.
Okay, so that's a little bit of a downer to end the panel.
Sorry. But we have free bookmarks for everyone.
We have free bookmarks. I do just want to say, like, everybody, first of all, again, thank you so much for coming. We also want to give a huge parasitoke to New York Comic Con, because when we filled out our application, we were like, we can only do this on Sunday. And they were like, sure, that's fine. And so thank you guys so much.